I'm a new F1 fan, so I'm not super knowledgeable, but I've been following for maybe 2 or 3 years now. What happens to those cars? Like, do they just sit in a showroom, or do they sell them? Can you get an F1 car? They come up with a couple new ones every year.
Correct. Yeah. So they do get retired, and many times they're sold to collectors without the powertrains. Some of the manufacturers have programs where you can buy a functional one, but they keep it and they maintain it. So Ferrari has that. They call it Corsa Clienti, and you can buy a decommissioned Formula One car, and they arrange events several times a year where they travel with all of them, and they'll fly them to whatever circuit it is. Usually it's before an F1 race or something like that. And they'll have a couple of days where their guys can go out. And honestly, it's pretty inexpensive. You know, it's usually like $5,000 to $10,000 per car per day. Now you're talking about a car that probably cost in maintenance $100,000 a weekend to really run. There you'll see. Now, if it's not a top tier car, if you're not buying a Mercedes, a Red Bull, an F1 car, or a Ferrari, then you're going to pay 10 to 20%, and that's so those cars could be worth $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 in a reasonably functional state, especially if you buy one that's more than 15 or 20 years old, and those are still considerably faster than any one of us could really like make move. There's been some really, really entertaining content built around the idea of a normal person driving an F1 car. In fact, that's my most viewed video, is a guy from England that was able to do kind of a test in an old Infiniti F1 car from the early 2000s. And the ability that we have to think fast enough, to react fast enough, to go fast enough, to brake fast enough, so that the car gets enough heat in the tires, enough heat in the brakes, enough air in the engine, and doesn't stall, it takes, a long, long time to figure out.
I want to talk. I've seen two videos.
These I linked to you are often going for 100,000 euro.
I've seen two videos on the idea of a regular person driving an F1 car. One was Top Gear, where Richard Hammond tried to drive it. Now, I don't know what you think of Richard Hammond, but I think, well, he must be a much better driver than a normal person, right? He's a car guy, but he's hamming it up and looking completely incompetent. And there's all this dramatic music, acting like he can't get the thing in gear. It has stall protection. The little bit I know is he's purposely trying to stall this thing out, and it won't let him do it. So it's jerk. And it was a bullshit video that made me hate Top Gear even more than I did before, because those cunts don't do anything seriously. They feign incompetence at everything they do.
This is a comedy show.
Wrong. Top Gear rocks. 2 thumbs down on that opinion. Don't like it.
All right.
It's inspired a lot of us for sure. But you're right.
Cruise drive it. Now, apparently he is a good driver. He has a little bit of race experience. I don't know how much racing he's done. He's certainly done racing movies, but they acted like, he really made the car go pretty well. And if he were serious about this, he would someday be a decent F1 driver. That's how they pretended it was.
Sure. And there's probably some validity there. I think when you think about putting a normal person in an F1 car, what's much more significant than their actual racing experience is that they've made a lot of vehicles move, right? Because the car is so unique in the way that you would engage with it that if you haven't driven a whole lot of different types of cars, you're not going to find any way to feel comfortable in it. And when you look at, their warm-up lap pace and things like that, it's not 10/10ths all the time. They can make them go around behind a pace car in a caution situation at 70, 80 miles an hour, which anybody's reaction times could keep up with. And so I think that is what you're seeing, is the desire of a television presenter or a journalist to go past that, past just making it around. Could we make it? Of course we can make it around in the car. You're right. It has stall protection. It's a sequential manual transmission. There's not a clutch to manage after you make the thing move. And so we could do that. If you try to look cool or go fast, that's where you're not going to have enough speed to manage the downforce. You're not going to have enough heat in the brakes to actually dive deep enough in to keep the tires warm enough that with any throttle application, you're not going to spin the car. And so it's that pivot towards fast where things go real wrong, and that is legitimate. So that's the difference.
Yeah. And for people, gosh, I feel like I don't know enough about F1 to teach people, but the things that make the car warm up are twofold. One is taking turns fast. You probably would have guessed that. You go around the turn, it puts a little sideways stress on the tire, it warms them up. Cool. The other is just going fast. The downforce presses down on it, and that sort of being pressed down while going fast warms up the car too. Unless your car is all warmed up, your tires are hot, your brakes are hot, they don't work very well. So you have to go fast enough to get them warm, but you can't go fast unless they're warm. And therein lies the thing that takes skill.
Yeah, if you ever watch NASCAR when they're in the, or maybe F1, I've never seen a second of it, so I don't know. But we're in the
never watched a second of NASCAR.
I'm not of F1, but in NASCAR,
okay.
you know, the caution laps, they're driving back and forth to keep the tires warm. I saw a guy doing that in traffic the other day. I was like, this man's professional. I had no idea that I was sharing the road with his likes. Oh, shit. His gloves on over there.
Yeah. In motorcycle tires, there's a similar thing. Like, you might want to buy the best tire there, the ones that the best people use. You can buy high-end tires, but they're not a good choice for me. Like, my dumbass spends half my time at a red light, or, you know, just doesn't get to drive in a way that keeps tires warm. So the fast tires are slower for regular people oftentimes.
Yeah. Is there a Goldilocks zone? Like, could you take, like, if you were to try and take a turn at like 80, is that fast enough that like you would spin out, and obviously it would, your tires wouldn't be heated up enough. So like, because I'm imagining myself, and if I didn't know anything, I'd be like, let's be responsible. Let's take a 70 turn. And that's probably the zone where you fuck yourself up, right? Because it's not meant for that.
Well, the problems are going to come up when you try to turn and accelerate, right? So if you go really, really fast and you brake as hard as you possibly can, turn through a corner, and then when you're pointed straight, hit the gas, as long as you're reasonably in the right gear, you're going to be okay. It's when you try to carry speed through a corner that you get into real trouble. And that's in any racing situation. You know, you'll hear the phrase like slow in, fast out. And that's what it means, is don't go too fast into the turn, go fast on the way out.
I think I know less about F1 than anyone here. I'm probably online with Kyle with F1.
You know, bumper cars though.
I've done bumper cars, but like I know that F1 driving is unbelievably hard. I saw a Pros vs. Joes episode in like 2002 where they were like, we've got this guy from the NFL, this guy from MLB, this guy from the NBA, and this driver. And I remember sitting there at like 12 being like, this stupid ass driver is going to get humiliated. The dude was unreal athletic. Like, he was outperforming the baseball guy in fucking everything. That baseball guy got his ass handed to him that day by the driver. But